technologists together, and they are going to use the scientific method that is guaranteed to make you a better fantasy football player. How can I give any guarantees in fantasy football? That seems really far-fetched. Well, it's just because using the scientific method just means that we're going to use the statistics to guide us to the answer. And in a statistics-based game like fantasy football, that means you are going to improve your game. And join him as he does each and every week. He is the professor, absolutely a real professor, too. It's John Bush. John, welcome back.
Hey, Dennis, it's great to be week one. Games are in the books. Lots of accolades have already been laid down for MVPs of the season now. And, we got a lot of this Hall of Fame talk out of the way. We know who already is going to be in there based on first two games. So it's nice to have that all clear. I hate unknowns. It's nice that we have experts to clarify everything and tell us exactly what we need to think. So it was interesting games. I know as a Chiefs fans, we'll be talking about that in just a second. Let's see what else. September, this is our second podcast of the week. We are moving to seasonal our in-season form. We'll be doing a Wednesday, Thursday morning, whatever, and a Friday or Saturday morning, whatever, to cover all the games. And we will do that. It's exciting to be doing this twice a week here. And we got a lot going on this season. We really do. So I'm excited, Dennis.
Yeah, and if you have any of the players involved in the first two games of the season, except for the tight ends.
Yeah.
If you got tight ends, you're probably not too happy unless you played Likely instead of watching Likely go off on your bench.
Right.
But everybody else, like if you rostered everybody else on these first two games, you are off to a great start this week. There's one team I have, Professor, where because it's a unique league. We didn't draft players, we drafted teams. So you got custody of two teams worth of players this season. I got the Philadelphia Eagles, and how I got them with the sixth pick in this draft out of 12, I have no idea, because you should have wanted Hurts, Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith on your team. That collection of four players should have been enough that they would have been, I would have drafted them in the top two this year, and I got them at 6. And then coming back at 19, I got Indianapolis Colts. So I got Jonathan Taylor. I've got Michael Pittman. I've got, Anthony Richardson. So I don't know if I'm going to get beaten in that league very often. The only exception is, well, it's going to be really interesting to see when these teams are on their bye weeks, how bad your lineups will look. But it's two games where we were pretty honest with people. We said the data suggests that we'll go under on the over-under spreads, but that we wouldn't bet these because it's too early in the season. There's too much uncertainty. We had no idea what was going to happen down in Brazil.
Yeah, I did not bet any of that business at all.
Stayed away from the over-unders. I didn't even make a play on the spreads. I got the Kansas City Chiefs spread right. I got the Packers spread wrong. Thanks to a missed field goal and a really bad decision by Green Bay Packers coach. You do not, when you are facing a team that has been able to put up a lot of points on you, you do not give them back the ball with the lead with 7 minutes left in a football game, because the worst case, you're going to drive all the way down the field, score more points. the best case is they're going to take about 4 minutes off the clock, and you're still going to be in the same situation, trying to get back in the red zone, trying to get deep in that red zone to score. I didn't understand that. 4th and 5, you need more than a field goal to win this game. I don't understand why you weren't throwing the ball to try to get the score right then and there and to get the lead back with 7 minutes left in the fourth. I didn't understand that, and it ended up, being a case where they still needed a touchdown at the end of the game. So didn't work out for them. The Kansas City and Baltimore game goes down is kind of one of these instant classics. You're not used to seeing teams just going all at it like we saw this early in the season, but they know that this game could come down to who has home field advantage when it counts in the playoffs. And to lose the game by the size of your big toe,
well, that was a big foot, like he had.
but such a rough way for Baltimore not to have a chance to win the game, because you saw the coach on the sideline, Harbaugh said, "I'm going for two. Go for two. We're going for two here." They were trying to win the game because they know you cannot put Mahomes into overtime with these rules and expect to beat Mahomes more often than not. So it's a two terrific games, two very entertaining games to start the year.
I liked them. They were good. I followed on Twitter. I'm not even sure what channels those were on, with all the weird cable stuff and rules and everything. I get lost on where people are at. I just follow on Twitter.
Yeah,
and then Dennis will text me and comments. So I follow it pretty good.
I'll keep you up to date, but we got to be smiling because we invested heavily in AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, heavily in Jaden Reed and Rashee Rice. I even have some Xavier Worthy, have some Pacheco, have some Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry still went over 10 points, folks. If that's his worst game of the season or one of his worst games of the season, I'll take that. And Pacheco is over 15. In fact, Pacheco, in every game that he has ever played in his young career, where he saw 70% or more of the offensive snaps, 15 points in PPR scoring.
That's nice.
That's a nice guarantee. And he got 80% of the snaps in week 1. Now, is he going to get 80% of the snaps all year long? No. They're going to want to give him a break when they've got a big lead. Mm-hmm. But when you're playing good teams, you don't get good leads, and they have a very tough schedule this year. So
I was happy with Jaden Reed for sure.
Oh,
I'm sitting there looking at my ownership in my 41 teams. I've got him in 13 leagues. I got him. So I'm pleased. I'm looking forward to Deebo Samuel. I drafted a lot of Brandon Cooks as well. Just wasn't, lots of controversy in the offseason, and I figured, he's good for a spike week or two. So I got a lot of him. Those are my big. And then Tyler Lockett, he was a free square, and I couldn't.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't not take him late. So I've got a lot of him. But those are my top 4 there. And as far as running backs, I'm just sitting there looking here. Carson Steele's number 1. He was free, and I could not keep drafting his alligator picture or what. Have you seen that?
Yes.
What is that? Does he own an alligator? What is?
Yes, he does. He's had an alligator since he was in high school, I guess.
Okay, so that's where the picture came. Well, being from, basically living in Louisiana most of my life, I had to draft him 58% of my league. So estimate I had him everywhere at 56%. And I'm looking forward to James Conner at
Oh yeah.
43%. And Ramondre Stevenson and Derrick Henry 36%. So I was uh, you always you never draft enough of certain players, right? Everybody's wasn't Henry supposed to be bad or something this year? Old or
Yeah, he's old, he's decrepit, he's gonna lose touches to Lamar
how,
around the goal line. I
how
mean,
many touchdowns did he get?
well, he only got one,
Yeah,
but
felt
he's
like it got more.
yeah, he's okay. He had a down week
Yeah.
against a good defense,
Yeah,
and
but
he's
I just
still
feel like that was
he,
good.
yeah,
I'm happy.
a down week. You got 10 points, and we know how rare it is for guys to be over 10 points on a consistent basis, week in, week out, on their good weeks. So
Yeah.
I'll take 10
No,
points.
that's a nice floor. If I can get
Yeah.
10, I can scrape uh, elsewhere and get some more. Maybe my James Conner, because I got a lot of. And by the way, my complaint, FFPC, I wish you would show me multiples. In other words, how many teams do I have Connor and Henry?
Oh, yeah.
For stats, kind of, I'm just looking at these doublets. I'm sure there's some strategy and tests we could run on, it's kind of like taking two RBs, early in the draft. It would be nice to have some a little bit more metric. I mean, I can figure this out. I'm just asking a little short. I play in your leagues a lot, FFPC. I wish y'all would email me, and I've got a lot of ideas of how we can make this better. But that would be one to where I can actually track how many Derrick Henry, Debo Samuel combos do I have. I mean, I think there's some secrets there. And Dennis, I'm thinking, preseason you're drafting. I think there's things with our consistency and one, the balancing. I guess it's like an equation, right? And in your chemistry class, you got to balance everything. And I have a feeling there's some secrets that are just eluding me now. I just imagine that there's this higher level of draft strategy where you have these combos and things, and it would just be nice to have after the season look at the combos and just figure out consistency of how many weeks did Debo and Henry go off for you, that kind of thing. In other words, mixing the different positions, and then maybe with your quarterback you have a running quarterback Hurts or a passing quarterback, and start juggling those metrics. I haven't seen that out there. Dennis, have you seen anybody talking about looking at it at a systems level? That as a biologist, we look at the ecosystem, we look at all the parts and trying to figure it out, and that's just what I want to do. I don't know. It just hit
No,
me.
I have not seen enough of that. I have not seen enough of even, people talk about having stacks and playing stacks
Yeah, is that good?
in a
Do we
tournament,
know that that's good?
in a tournament setting
Is
of
that good
fantasy
though?
football. If if your if your stack has a great defensive matchup during the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
I would
Is that
think
good?
that stack would pay off.
But where's the
But
beta test? That's
but
what I'd
there's
like to
but
see.
nobody ever does that level of testing. And yes, it is kind of more difficult because you have to go a little deeper into the weeds.
Dennis,
But
just randomness. What is the average chance of having a stack? Just
oh
not even
yeah,
trying. So
yeah.
there's your reference class forecast. Just okay, on the average, every average team has two stacks. I don't know if that is, but that kind of thing. In other words, so if you're going to use the stacking technique, you think it's great. How many stacks do you need above kind of just the randomness to make it that you're actually pushing that? In other words, take 4 stacks, in other words, a quarterback and 2 wide receivers, and like your second quarterback and a tight end. So that's 5. Does that count as 5? I don't know. I mean, even the definition of what a stack is. What does that mean?
Yeah, and what I like to do, one of the strategy within the strategy things that I like to do
Yeah.
is sometimes have the RB and the WR from the same team. And here's why I like that strategy. Now, it has not been something that I have data tested, but it's a logic test for me because a lot of times your production spikes happen because of a game scripted situation.
Mm-hmm.
So if a team gets a big lead, they're going to run the ball more. There's going to be more opportunities for the running back. If the team is playing from behind, there might be more passing opportunities late in the game. There might be more junk yards. So I like to have part of both worlds. And that way I know my collective score between that RB and that WR each week is going to sort of balance out. It's just like the play them both strategy for 2 running backs. If I've got 2 running backs that are splitting the backfield, a David Montgomery and a Jamar Gibbs, for instance, if Gibbs's points go up, Montgomery's will go down and vice versa. But the collective score between the two, if I really like that offense, I'm going to get 25 to 30 points from those 2 RBs. Show me another 2 RBs where I can say that with confidence that I'm going to get 25 to 30 points playing 2 random RBs. So, yes, you hurt your ceiling a little bit by playing both of the RBs, and maybe by playing an RB and a WR from the same team, you might hurt your upside a little bit than not having 2 coupled players. But I think it helps your overall ability to score points. And Professor, I don't care if I have the high score of the week among my players. I care about one thing. Did I win or did I lose? And in leagues where you get scored above median, too, did I score above the median in the league? And I know if I'm playing guys who have a historically high MVP index, I'm going to be over the league median more often than not. And when I'm over the league median, because it means I beat half of the people in the league, I've got a better chance of winning my matchup as well. So that's kind of how I look at the fantasy football equation. But you're right. We've never done extensive testing on any of these things that are sort of, especially in best ball, they're sort of accepted theories. Oh, it's great to stack a quarterback and a wide receiver. Well, it makes sense. If the wide receiver goes off, the quarterback's also having a good day. So you get 2 players that are going off on your best ball team. But no, it's never been tested. And the other thing that will need to be tested is it all comes back to their value. It all comes back to how cheap was it to acquire this stack. Last year on teams, Professor, I had a lot of teams that had Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua because they were both cheap. It doesn't mean that the stacking the 2 of them worked great. But if I try that same stack this year at 2nd and 3rd round values, it's not as good as it was at 18th and 19th round values last year. So there's a lot of things in fantasy football that do need to be tested, but there's some that might be a little tough to test unless you bring value versus ADP into the equation as well.
I agree. I don't know, Saturday morning, I'm in that mood, Dennis. I don't have time, folks, to do all the things I want to do. I still need interns. Uh, I just got these, they just bubble up. And every time I talk to Dennis, he just gets me going. My mind's racing. It's crazy. And I enjoyed the expo. I listened to some people. I was kind of quiet, floating in the weeds. Those that were interacted with me some. If I seem quiet, it's because I'm watching and thinking. I'm in the weeds floating, a little barracuda, and I'll come out when I need to and snatch something and go back. And it's like, what just happened? I mean, that's just who I am, my personality. That's how I play poker. I'm old sleepy professor. Then all of a sudden, I'm all in. And you be like, what's going on? And that's just, I got to keep them guessing, Dennis. But anyway, I was watching and listening to folks in the expo, and it was some good and bad. But anyway, that's another day. I'm just, there's just things I wish we had more access as players, that I think the companies probably have that data, and you wonder if their people got that secret sauce, Dennis. I'm wondering if FFPC doesn't have the rate of return of stacks and best ball. Let's just say
Oh
multi
yeah.
stacks. Come
Yeah.
on, I know they've got to have that data because they've got, the payouts and they've got the team. How come they don't show that? Who's getting that data? I always
They're-
wondered in these Vegas bets, and you have these, you sign up for these props. Dennis is signed up. You ever wonder, Dennis, if they're not watching and some of them are saying, hey, we got a live one. This Dennis cat's been hitting a lot of props. We need to get our bots, our robots, to follow along and just in the background. Every time he bets, we gonna bet too. And if your ROI is good over a long bet, somebody's collecting. I mean, that would be my tendency if I was on that side and had access to all this data. I'd be wanting to find out who's the real who. There's a lot of noise out there. It'd be nice to know what's real. And I bet you they know stacks. I bet they got a lot of answers that I would like to see. And the data distribution, I would love to really tear into the data these big places have. And I don't know why they don't share it. I understand maybe you could subscribe, if they want to make some more money. But I would think if they presented that kind of freebie, get everybody all stirred up, you'd get more players there and you'd make more money. I'm just saying, Dennis and I got some great ideas. Any of you big sites, folks, listen. I bet we could help you. Maybe not the first week, but over a period of time, I think we could up the players' game, and that would make them want to play more. That's just my 10 cents. Anybody want to collaborate with us?
And that is the big key, is knowledge is power. And
Yes.
I would be shocked if these sites like FPPC and Underdog and drafters who have, millions upon millions of data points over the years,
They got that data.
I would be shocked if they're not selling that data. So
They should. I
we got to
would. I
we
would
got to look
organize it. Yeah.
we got to look into that, because if they're not selling it, they're not making money off of that now. We can
They're
show them.
losing money.
We could show them how to make money. Now, the interesting thing that we discovered, though, this week, Professor, had to
Yeah.
do with that Baltimore Ravens Kansas City Chiefs game, when we put all the data into our secret sauce.
Yeah.
And one of our particular things that we look at that is a little bit different than what most people would look at if they're looking at quarterback props, we look at the strength of defense against the running backs as a big clue as to what's going on. We won't tell you how we do it,
Yeah.
but we'll tell you the general that we look at the data from with a lot of different lenses. And when we looked at it from a running back point of view, we discovered that the prop that was being used was identical to the prop to what our calculation would have been for the passing yards. When you see your calculation and the prop within a yard,
That was suspicious, wasn't it?
It sure does pop up. But we'll be watching these things, folks, and we are going to be charting the data and watching patterns all year long.
Yep.
And we'll have more knowledge as the season goes on. But one of the things, Professor, that I don't think gets talked about enough in the fantasy football world is dealing with these unique situations that we have going on right now. With the Cincinnati Bengals, they were originally my team that I was taking this week in a survivor pool where you only have to pick one team every week, but when you pick them, you can't pick them again the rest of the year.
I'm not sure this is the week with all these injuries, and Chase says he might play, and
I ran away from that one as fast as I could this week because you got the Jamar Chase situation where he's basically telling them that he's hurt when he's not.
Yeah.
But if he says, "Oh, my hamstring, I can't practice, I can't play,"
it hurts.
It's tweaky. It's not 100%. I'm not 100%. It's not quite right. They can't find him.
No,
because they can't prove
that he's not tweaky. Yeah,
not hurt. And then on top of his situation, and the reason I think he's getting more achy painy and talking about sitting out is because he looks across the wide receiver room and sees that T. Higgins is really hurt.
He's doubtful on FFPC. Doubtful.
Yes. So if you were looking to leverage a contract situation and you're a wide receiver,
week one would be a good place to do that.
And you see that your other top wide receiver on the team is likely to miss the game. Wouldn't that be the week that you push all in and say, hey, we got to get something done, or I'm just not sure how this, I'm just afraid to go with this hamstring the way it is. But I think he'd have a miracle cure if you gave him $30 million a year, guaranteed for the next 5 years. I think all of a sudden you give him the biggest contract that's out there at the wide receiver. And it's going to be like you brought in that faith healer from Sunday morning TV. Oh, praise the Lord, you're healed. And he'd be out there.
That was good.
Thank you. I've been practicing because if this fantasy football thing doesn't work out, being a faith healer might.
Oh, yeah.
I could heal Jordan Love for you. Maybe there's a crossover.
Yeah.
Fantasy football. But anyway, how do you handle a situation like this? Do you have any confidence that Jamar Chase is going to play? I took Higgins out of all my lineups. Guess who I put in 2 lineups where I was missing Higgins?
I have no clue.
How about Jaden Reed?
Well, Dennis, I played Jaden Reed every place I could. I did not have that luxury.
I had 2 teams where Jaden Reed.
You must have a hell of a team if he's on your bench.
Yes. So I'm on Ross St. Brown.
Okay. Yeah.
Had T. Higgins. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had Chris Godwin.
Okay.
And I had Jaden Reed.
Okay.
And one team, instead of Godwin, I had Rashee Rice, and I played Rice. So, but Jaden Reed was in all of my lineups except for one this week. But 2 of the teams where he was in the lineup, I was really struggling. One he was in as one of my starters along with T. Higgins, and the other one he was not. Or he was sitting on the bench because I was going to go with Godwin. I really like Godwin's matchup this week. I think he's going to have a heck of a season. And I thought, with the Brazil game, I'm uncertain. I don't like these foreign games. I'm just going to sit him out this week and see how it goes. He'd be in my lineup the rest of the year, but I just didn't know about the Brazil game. But as soon as Higgins got hurt, it's like plug him in. He's playing.
Yeah. That was
But
nice.
but only one share between Dynasty and all my set lineup teams only have one share of Jaden Reed on the bench. And that's where when I picked him up in my home league off of waivers after the draft. Could you imagine picking him up off of waivers? That's scary.
Yeah. What do we think about the two wide receiver threes for Cincinnati? Since people can still some we have to bid for them, but there may be right now they could rush to the waiver wire. Any of those, Burton and Lovis? I can't pronounce the other guy's name.
Yeah, I believe it's pronounced SCIOFF, but
Oh
I
my
could
goodness.
be wrong on that
You radio
pronunciation.
guys know how to pronounce. I don't. I'm so used to students saying, "Hey, folks, get to work over there." That's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's the pronunciation I'm going with. And I would take him over Burton the rookie.
Yeah.
Both are going to probably be playing a lot of snaps if Chase and Higgins both miss the game. Because there's no Tyler Boyd in town anymore.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to get a lot of snaps, but I know what the other guy did. I don't know what the rookie did. So, the rookie doesn't have a track record. So I would go with the second year player instead, but it's a 60-40 decision, Professor, in my opinion. Now we drafted a lot more of SCIOFF in best ball because
you had to.
He's Tyler Boyd coming into this season. And, Tyler Boyd's always a valuable player to have in a best ball format. But that's my guess is that, I think he gets the nod over Burton, but it's a 60-40 decision. It is close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just was trying to figure out, we got deep benches and
Yes.
he's available in 4 out of my 41 teams. So I could go bid for him. But trouble is I looked at one of them and right now, my issue is I see the potential, the reason I draft, and I feel like I'm kind of stuck, especially all these running backs that could really help me later in the playoffs. The Ray Davis, is it Vidal from Chargers and
Yes.
and Estime and it's like I don't want to give up one of those. I want my cake and eat it. I want an extra bench spot is really what I need.
Yes.
And there should be a way to figure that out in the league too. Like if somebody wants to pay more to the kitty to have an extra bench spot, maybe that's how you build your pot. I don't know that, that may be something people might want to consider down the road. I don't know. Anyway, I've got to make that decision today. Do I want to bid for him? And do I really want to get greedy and try to bid like $1? Hope that everybody else is asleep? Or, I don't want to pay. I want the good possibility cheap, Dennis. I want it all. Okay. I want the pancake with the syrup and lots of butter, slathered. So we call it down here in the South, slathered in butter. We don't use no fake margarine crap. Okay. I take statins. My doctor gave me some statins for the cholesterol medicine, Dennis. And I said, well, what's this good for here, Doc? He says, you can have lots more steak. I said, ooh, I like that. And I said, so like scallops swimming in butter? Yeah. Oh, so now everything I have swims in butter, Dennis, down here. So my crawfish in butter and my shrimps in butter, everything's got that extra butter sauce. I want extra butter sauce. And so that's what I want, Dennis. I want these extra players that have potential for nothing. I want them to almost be free. $1 in, you got to bid something. That's what I want. So I'm just telling you, this is what I want for Christmas, Dennis.
And I wish FPPC did what a lot of leagues do, where they do have an IR spot. I mean,
Wouldn't that be nice?
We have IR spots in Dynasty in FPPC, but I would like to have in one spot. You don't need a lot. Just one spot would be nice, where you can, bury a guy, get somebody new, and hold on to those players that are on IR, because you have to make an educated guess on when will they be back. And I don't like doing that. I have my last player that I took in some of those leagues was Rashid Ali from Baltimore. He starts the season on IR, and he was just an emergency extra running back to have. Now I feel like the need for another emergency running back, if he's going to miss, more time. He wasn't going to be anything unless Derrick Henry got hurt anyway. So I'm kind of looking at that spot on my roster to see if either Iosavas or Burton are available. But I haven't had much success in the leagues I'm in so far. But this, Professor, it comes to all down to having a process, having a game plan in fantasy football. You got to have a process preseason, and we like having rating systems that we use for players. So we're just
weekly consistency.
Weekly, correct. Weekly values based around consistency, based around upside consistency. Yes. And that way you got an idea of who has done the most in the past. Then you can try to apply changes for this season and get an idea of who's going to get the opportunity that didn't have full-time opportunity in the past years, and try to make some educated guesses. But you also need this process. You can never be static with your rosters in fantasy football. If I would look at a typical roster of mine from start to finish in redraft, probably wouldn't find many rosters. And I'm not talking defense or kicker here, because those I quite often change, every week. But other players, I would say, if I didn't have 25 to 30% turnover in my roster, in every churn from start to finish, I would be shocked, because I quite often have teams that are closer to 40% churn from the start of the season to the end. Now, granted, some of it happens when you get players hurt and they're no value. If they're gone for the season, they're off your redraft team right away. There is no next year on those rosters. But a lot of it is, hey, this guy isn't getting the opportunity that I thought this other player is. I'm going to sub him in. So you can't stay static, but you have to have a process. You can't be willy-nilly about it. You've got to have almost like a decision tree of saying, this player is not as valuable on my roster because he either A, is injured and he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks or longer, or B, he's not getting the opportunities that I expected him to get. Other players have stepped up. He is not in a direct path to opportunities to hit my starting lineup any given week here for the next 4 or 6 weeks. I always use that 4 to 6 week window and say, okay, and that's, it gets changed. The process, the third part is, do I really need a player badly? And if you need a player badly for a plug and play because you've got so many injuries or bye weeks, then even a valuable player, even a guy you see could be back in a couple weeks, all of a sudden becomes expendable because you need to win this week. But you need to have a process. And Professor, I don't always see people having a process based on some of the questions that I
Right.
get
Yeah.
every week.
So things that I think, and I told Dennis for the show that I wanted us to discuss uh, a process. First thing is setting up your diary. Uh, if you've never done that, I've got a video lesson, Science Fantasy Football, on the diary. It's hidden in there somewhere. And you know, if you've been to our site, no offense, folks, it's just me and Dennis working it, and we don't have the, you know, we have real lives, and we want to stay married and interact with our family, and you know, not just go in a cave. Even though I joke about the data cave, you know, I don't have time to be the fancy side here. We're trying to be the guerrilla army that pops up, does its business, and flips back down. And you know, where'd they go? And so we're attacking from the edges, from the boundaries, trying to push things. So, but anyway, it's in there. But you need to set up your diary, and if you haven't, copy your draft boards for your redraft teams and start getting ready to chart that, kind of look back and just write down some things. With 41, it's hard for me. I just grab the draft boards, and that's all I can do, and I'll worry about other stuff later. I do the timing. I found that time of the preseason when I draft made a difference. So I'm uh, probably not surprisingly, the late August has historically been better for me than June. Okay. I've won in June, but not as much. And I'm greedy. So I would rather spend more time where I can catch bigger fish. And that's why I did 41. Basically, Dennis, when was the expo? Like the 9th? I drafted 41 redraft,
Wow.
basically between then and there. And this is 20 spots there, a defense and a kicker, and I'll be streaming those. So set up your diary, folks. Don't wait till December and you look back at your draft board, or worse, where is my draft board? Okay, folks, if if you want to move forward, you got to change whatever, especially if you haven't won a lot of championships. You got to do something different. You know, don't be like your league mates and whatnot. But get your draft board. Now's the time. It's Saturday. We're recording this Saturday morning, like Tuesday. If you don't have all, you know, especially if you, I got 41. I don't have time to do anything but work waiver wires. And right now I'm all in on lineups. I keep flipping things around, especially my flexes. Diary number one. Number two, what data are you going to chart this year? Make it everybody has a New Year's resolution. We're going to have a fantasy football first week season resolution. And I think you are, especially those who haven't, become friends with, you know, Google Charts or Google Docs, and or I use Excel. And what data are you going to chart? And if you do nothing else, I think you should follow snaps, targets, and rushing attempts, right? You need to understand at the team level the distribution. And I know there's a lot of sites that give you these percentages, and that's fine. Me personally, as a data person, if you're a data person, I like to do my own data. I don't like reading somebody on the Twitter or something. And I don't like to give people money for stuff that I can do. I do subscribe to one site because they do things that I don't have time to do. And I do have Fantasy Pros, because of their playbook, I can actually look at the multi-league level with 41, and I can find out what players are available in what leagues versus me looking at all 41 to decide, what I need to do. If I can save myself time. So that's worth it. So, yeah, but what are you going to chart? I'm thinking snaps, targets, attempts. Dennis preaches it. Opportunities, folks. If there are people you don't recognize getting some more opportunities, it's like, who is this running? This third running back. Why is he getting 6 snaps or whatever it is? Whatever you've noticed, I don't know. But at least and then next week he gets 12, and then all of a sudden he's 20 snaps, and I'm telling you, if you wait too long, everybody's got him, or you got to pay too much money. So we chart the opportunities. Dennis and I are also charting weekly values. I'm doing my com data every week, or trying to. I say that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up, but I've got my efficiency metrics that I'll be using. I've got to chart that. I've got too much to chart in the time I have to do it, Dennis. Damn it. I mean, interns. So I'm urging people, diary, and just pick one or two metrics. I would say 3 targets, rushing, or you could do touches. That can cover targets. So do touches and snap, but you need snaps, folks, because there may be people that are kind of floating in the weeds that people are not paying attention to, and you can jump on them with your league mates. And you just don't want to be surprised. Like, who's this player? Who's this Puka? Puka? What is that? And you just don't want to be surprised. So process, diary, get your draft boards going. What did you do? Keep that for next year, and start charting some data next Tuesday, Wednesday. And a lot of it's free, Dennis. You can go get all the stuff you don't have to pay money. There's plenty of places that you can go write things down. And if you do your own data, you learn it more, students. If students just memorize something versus I make them do extra things and write down their notes. When they come to me, Dr. Bush, I don't understand any of this. I said, okay, what are all the concepts you don't understand? Oh, I don't understand this. Great. Take the concept, write down on a flashcard. See, this is where I lose all the students. Write down what that concept is, and then go research, make sure you're right. I said, if you really a visual learner, Dr. Bush, I'm a visual, then go and get images of that process of, say, photosynthesis. If you're a plant person, go look at the concept of photosynthesis. Here's a picture of it. Just look at that, while you're goofing around instead of watching cartoons all day and swilling beer. Look at your flashcards. And Dennis, I had one student, Dr. Bush, I did all that. I said, great. Why don't you meet me tomorrow? Bring me all your 100 or so flashcards with all your data on, and I'll go through them and help you work them better. Dennis, I'm still waiting for that student. They did not show up. So they wanted to claim that they put the effort and time in, Dennis. You've been a student, right? We were all college. You really think that crazy professor? What do you mean I'm supposed to write? I mean, I got parties to go to and bars to hang out and chase folks around and stuff. I worry about earning a living later, and all of a sudden they're 30 at the McDonald's. It's like, how did I get here? Folks, it is time to grow up. Okay. Professor says, grow up, get your diary, chart your data, get your draft boards. Why the hell did you draft who you drafted? And then listen to us and start getting into our consistency. We're giving it to you now, but I'm telling you, you need to find what works for you. So that's my Dr. Bush's diatribe on get your ass to work for the process, your in-season process.
Yeah, and I love that, Professor, because one of the things I've done for years is I've got a pad of paper wherever I'm watching the football games. There's a pad of paper and a clipboard right there with me.
Nice.
And
Nice.
I like to during say I'm watching a you know, tomorrow I'll be watching the Bears game from start to finish. I'll switch over to red zone afterwards. But if I don't switch to red zone during the commercials, I'm going through every single one of the game logs. I'm looking at who is the replacement at different positions during live football games. Okay. Running back A goes out of the game for 2 plays because he got tackled hard. Who was it that came in? And what situation was it that this player came into the game? Were they deep in their own territory and the old cagey veteran came off the bench? Were they in the red zone and they brought their young player who has got some ability but is unproven? What is the situation? And so I'll write, so and so, Wilson, red zone, and just keep some notes, team, player, and situation, just jotting them down. It takes no time at all, but once you write something down, you remember it more. So it sticks in the back of your brain. And even if you don't remember it, you've got these notes that you can go over. And then I love looking at box scores every Monday. I'll look at the box scores and see was there something that I didn't pick up from watching the games. And that helps you see situations. It helps you see usage. It helps you see that next player emerging before everybody else in your league does. And yes, we'll give you some waiver wire advice at thescienceoffantasyfootball.com, but you can do a lot of this yourself, folks. That's our whole mantra, is that we're trying to teach you to
Yes.
be better at fantasy football. And one of the ways, Professor,
Yeah.
that you can be better at fantasy football when it comes to those matchups and it also comes to playing prop bets
Yeah.
is understanding matchups. So, like we do every week, we're
Yeah.
going to look at some of the squirrel games, the
Yeah.
annoying low scoring games
Yeah.
that drive you crazy.
So Dennis, I'm sharing this with our people that watch the video. You actually get to see all of it. I'll post these hard copies. I've got every game broken out. If you saw Wednesday how I broke out the two games, it's just to give you some place to start. This is not the end, folks. This is just for a place to start your thinking, because this is not set in stone. This is just where we start thinking about things. And here it is, Dennis. This is looking at all the games. I've divided into 4 slices. The higher scoring predicted game, Vegas. Give you a hint if you weren't here Wednesday. Vegas exists because Vegas is not stupid, Dennis. They have serious data crunchers, people, AI, whatever, algorithm, I don't know. But when they say a game is a shootout, a Husky game, that's probably good for us to consider there's going to be some firework. When they say it's a squirrel game below around 42 or less, especially we have New Orleans, Carolina, 40.
Oh,
And in Vegas and Chargers, 40.5. So that's not good as far as compared to Detroit and the Rams at 50 something. So it's good to know as you look at lineups, and then props as well, right? I mean, higher points, more opportunity to score touchdowns and these kind of things. So I have all this data here, Dennis. You could look at the games. I give the predicted scores, the spread as of yesterday, Friday, and over under. It may tweak a little bit. I doubt by Friday things are going to get so crazy, but you could check. And I didn't bet the Philadelphia Green Bay. It was 48.5 because I didn't know what the hell was
No.
going on down there. So I just I didn't even pay attention to that game other than just, I wasn't going to sit people that I drafted like Jaden Reed and Henry and these kind of things, Hurts and Love and whatnot. But anyway, here's the slice for the week, Dennis. So which ones do you want to go over?
Well, let's look at the annoying squirrel
That's at the
games
bottom, Dennis. We have a
first.
lot of annoying games. We have 8 annoying games.
So let's look at a couple of these
Okay.
because they're games that I'm kind of interested to see
Okay.
how they'll turn out from a fantasy football standpoint. So we talked about the Cincinnati injury situation. A lot of interesting decisions to make
Yeah.
with that Cincinnati game at against New England. I think New England's going to be better than everybody is expecting. Most people seem to be expecting them to be, but maybe not week one. But here's a situation where I don't think the Cincinnati defense
Mhm.
is as stout as some
So you want to
want to
talk about
think.
the Cincinnati,
So
New
let's talk
England.
about Cincinnati
Okay.
and New England and see how this works out.
Vegas says it's 41. Spread is 8. They think Cincinnati's going to spank New England like 28-12 or something. It's just, why even play the game, right? I mean, I'm sure New England won't agree with that, but that's what Vegas is seeing it. But even though Cincinnati's favored, I wonder if how does that affect with if Higgins is doubtful and Chase doesn't play? You got to wonder, does this even get worse than Vegas thinks as far as scoring? I think Vegas is not a believer in New England scoring anything,
No,
basically.
no,
So that's the issue. DAPS is the next line. We have game, number, week, season segment. The team, Cincinnati's at home. Uh, New England is fairly easy. At least this is defensive against position data from last year. And so they give Cincinnati a easy quarterback, wide receiver, well, above average. So, let's call it mid. And then a little bit tough on RB and tight end. And you don't want to play the Cincinnati kicker. The Cincinnati D may be of some interest. I'm not playing them, but they could have been in the streaming conversation. New England against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's easy too. And it looks like, I don't know who Hunter Henry, extra easy. Look at that with the tight end. And it's just, if we knew what wide receiver was going to be the alpha, and there may not be an alpha, Dennis, it may be hot hand or whoever's out there, or whatever. And the quarterback actually has, not a tough situation. I wouldn't play the D. Cincinnati at home loves to pass, not as much rushing. So is Mixon? That's right. They got Mixon, right?
no. They
So
got Zach Moss or
Zach
Chase
Moss.
Brown.
Well, tendency from last year is pass more. So of those, who's the pass catcher? Is it Chase?
Probably Chase Brown, but it
Well,
could be a 50-50 split.
but so I'm thinking we may get some passing out, especially if Higgins doesn't play. That may be
Oh yeah.
something for your, your daily fantasy sport, your daily games and whatnot. New England at away loves to rush, and pass is about the same either way. So New England's going to want to rush, and that's Cincinnati's a little tough on rushing. So Ramadre uh, should have plenty of opportunities. Now, my DAP landscape says it's kind of average for Cincinnati. New England's indicates based on secret metrics, passing and rushing are a little rough, but the rushing is average. So there's a little bit of disparity between what our defense against position said versus these landscape concepts, which includes some Vegas metrics and things. Uh, but I'm playing Ramondre Stevenson anyway in flexes and whatnot. You know, I didn't draft him to be my one, but he could definitely be a 2-3 type this game. So I'll stop there and let Dennis comment.
Yes, so much uncertainty in this game. We talked
Oh, yeah.
about the wide receiver situation for Cincinnati. With New England, you've basically got a four-headed monster over there that nobody's really sure who is going to emerge as the top wide receiver. You got the two rookies, Jalen Polk and Baker, and then you've got the two veterans in Demario Douglas and KJ Osborne. Thankfully, Kendrick Bourne is hurt, so that eliminates a fifth head to be trying to figure out over there. Hunter Henry's definitely going to have all the opportunities he wants at tight end. And Stevenson is a good pass catching back, but so is Antonio Gibson. So, how much does that water down Stevenson's PPR value? I agree with you. I'll have a lot of Ramondre Stevenson in the lineup. They're not going to win by airing the ball out 50 times. Jacoby Brissett is a more of a game manager style quarterback than he is a big dynamic thrower. So I think they'll run early and often. I think that'll be the strategy. A lot of short passes, a lot of very conservative game plan. And Cincinnati's defense doesn't scare me. But you flip it over to the Cincinnati side, and we've also got so much uncertainty because Coach said maybe a 50-50 split with Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Who's going to take over more of third and longs? Who knows? Burrow is going to be asked to do a lot, but who is he going to do it with? If Chase and Higgins are gone, it really puts the pressure on. Does it become Jermaine Burton? Is it Andre Iosavas? Is it Trent Irwin, who we saw a lot of last year when Tyler Boyd and Chase and Higgins all missed time? So there's another fifth name that gets thrown in there that could step up to the plate as well. A lot of uncertainty with Cincinnati. I am probably going to be minimizing who I'm playing. I have one team where I missed at tight end that Gesicki will be in there as my starting tight end. And I like him a little bit more with Chase and Higgins uncertainty. Burrow does like going to his tight end. So,
well,
but
Dennis,
this,
you know, the DAP's below average. Just be aware.
they say it's going to be tough. Yeah. So it's not an easy assignment, and I'm certainly hoping I've got something better. But on one team, that's all I had available was Gesicki and well, I tell you who was sitting on my bench last week on that team or on the bench this week on that team, and it was Isaiah Likely. So I missed on that opportunity. So I'm stuck with Gesicki. I don't have anybody else to play, and that'll be my guy. But otherwise, Professor, my advice on this, with all of this uncertainty, is if you can find more certainty elsewhere, I'm certainly taking it this week.
The the metrics I have, folks, just kind of my beginning ratings and then certainty levels. Nothing here that I look at the metrics jumps out to say I should play or not play. I'm probably not playing Brown or Moss in any kind of, other than maybe a flex. And, you know, if I knew for sure who was going to catch more of the passing, that would probably tip it. But for me, I've got them almost dead even. I don't know which one. I think they're good 2-3 type this week. They're not one type. Burrow, I don't know what we're going. I mean, can you imagine you've injured, you're ready to go, and your main crew is pulling out for you? I mean, nobody's asked him, or if they have, he probably hadn't said anything, but I know he cannot be happy. So the questions I have, and just remember 1 week doesn't tell us anything yet, but I'm going to watch the snaps and the touches for Brown and Moss. Going to be interested in Burton and whatever Andre. Uh, I'm not even going to say that last name, Saveas or whatever. Dennis, you're so good at that. Those are questions I have for New England. The question that I had all summer: who's going to get it? Is this Polk guy? Dennis was real high on him, and
Oh
I,
yeah.
I
Yep.
drafted him on occasion. He was almost free or close to late in the best ball drafts. I was able to pick him up. I like Douglas. I picked him up. It's kind of my seventh WR, sixth. It's almost like you can't go wrong, but somebody could break out of this. I don't know in week one, but I'm going to be watching the snaps and the targets and things for these to see. Henry is Henry. He's going to have 2 or 3 nice games for you, maybe more. This could be one. Everybody's kind of rusty. uh, Brissett may pepper him in the red zone. That might be, your opportunity. I like Stevenson. I'm concerned about his floor ceiling. I've got him as high in certainty, just the environment, just all that, and having Gibson taking away some touches. Gibson may be a little injured, Dennis. I think he's questionable. So if he doesn't go, I don't even know who the third guy is, but that's some more information. Snaps could tell you, and I'll know more couple weeks about that. So I've got a lot of questions. So a lot of times the snaps and things start clarifying questions for me, but this is a team that I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think with Gibson out, what that basically does is mean that Ramondre Stevenson gets more carries.
Then that would
The
be good
only
for my flex then.
the only other running back that is on the active roster right now is Jermichael Hasty.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't get anybody excited, so it's going to be interesting to see what's there. But I would take it very cautious when it comes to that New England Cincinnati game, other than I like Stevenson as a good RB2 or flex play. Here's another game that is, I think, going to be very interesting, and injuries could come into play in a whole different game plan. How about the Steelers in Atlanta? The Steelers and the Falcons. This is a game where I think there's a lot of uncertainty too. You got a new coaching staff in Atlanta. You got a new offensive coordinator up in Pittsburgh. You got Russell Wilson, who is listed questionable, might not play. Does that change the whole game plan? How is it going to go? Atlanta is changing everything. So new quarterback, new coaches, staff, everything's different with them. So this is going to be a very tough game to try to handicap as well.
The DAPs seem to tell us that Atlanta rushing has some opportunity, and the quarterback Cousins is going to have to earn his biscuits. Uh, the DAPs say it's tough. The tight end, if it has an opportunity, I think Cousins. It's like I'm so focused on last year, Dennis. I've got to etch or sketch that away to see how Cousins does. I'm more optimistic this year about Kyle Pitts than ever. I didn't actually draft any shares of him, but I'm interested to see how that will go there. Pittsburgh, looks like the quarterback and the tight end have some opportunities. The running back, it's going to be tough this year. Kicker, I like both kickers. I don't play any of the defenses. Atlanta's at home. They like to rush and pass. So they're really skewed towards loving their home. And so that plays in. So in some ways, Atlanta is favored, right? 24-18,
Yep.
3-point spread. So that's part of it is I think they're going to get you a lot of activity. Don't know if it's going to give you touchdowns, Dennis, but I think there's going to be some activity there. Pittsburgh, away, loves to rush, doesn't love to pass as much. So I'm expecting, but the thing is, their tendency is running right into the a tough DAP. Landscape wise, shows us something different. Again, it's a different way to look at it. And it actually seems to imply a passing shootout. That would imply that over under is a little suspicious if that's real. And folks saying, well, how can you have conflicting data? Well, Dennis and I deal with conflicting data by doing beta test. We don't know enough about what I'm doing this year to start betting our mortgage on whether there's high passing or high receiving yard or whatever. But you cannot ignore data that is there. And this is legitimate data. It's just it goes against the other data. And that's the hardest thing, I think. Then in this, let's call this some more of our process is holding conflicting ideas in your head at once is hard. People like, well, you suck and you don't. They like the extremes in politics, right? You're bad, we're good. It don't matter what you're doing or what we're always good, you're always bad. And we all know in the human world, there's a lot of gray. It is not black and white. And data can be like that. And so this year, we really what you guys don't know behind the scenes is we've got so many beta tests going. I think we're going to be hang with us, folks. This is going to be a really interesting testing year, but we're not going to be able to mortgage the house for you. Okay, so if you're listening to us for that, just show me the easy picks. Professor, what's on the test? Basically, is the same question. I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you what's on the test because I don't even know what the test is right now. Right? I mean, I'm going to admit it. These experts on Twitter, go listen to them. They know it all, and they'll tell you exactly what it is each week. Right? And ask Fantasy Receipts. They will stand by all these picks and hot takes. Folks, it is better to be realistic and test and do beta test and try to figure it out. And you should realize that we don't know what we don't know. And I'm just giving you conflicting data because that's what it is. I would be disingenuous saying, oh, yeah, this is exactly I can't do that. I'm telling you that one metric collection, let's call it a collection of metric. I slice and dice and I come up with passing and reception going to be really nice for both teams. The rushing's not going to, it's going to be average. The DAPS would imply that Atlanta's going to have a tougher time with passing. So that would be conflicting there. And it says Pittsburgh's rushing is going to be tough, but another way to look at it says it's not as tough as you think. So I know you want the exact answers and exactly what's going to happen. Folks, if I knew 100%, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be living in a penthouse in Vegas with my family. We'd be smoking big cigars and eating caviar all day and champagne because I know it all, right? And of course, the sports books, they'd want to throw me out, right? Sorry, Dr. Bush, you were not allowed in here. You win too much money, right? We all have that fantasy, dentist. We're so
it
damn
it
good. Even the books don't want to handle us. Then you have to get a disguise right. You get your Halloween mask and the old man mask, come in barely, can walk over and put that big money on the sports book here. They don't, folks. They really don't care. I don't think online.
No,
Anyway, Dennis, just that's conflicting data. We are in the middle of beta testing, and we're going to be so much smarter next year. And then we'll have more questions to test. You say, you're thinking, when does it end, folks? Science, it's always in flux. Things are happening, technologies, everything's going on. It's we're in the hamster wheel, and we're never going to stop till I'm dead. So that's it. So that you get what you get, and don't throw a fit. It's what my mom used to say. She'd get that fly swatter after me.
Well, the
Dennis,
game.
my mother grabbed me by the shoulder. You know you got to hear a professor. So, and she'd make me do the fly swatter dance. Dennis, you ever had done the fly swatter?
Oh,
She'd take that fly swatter between my legs and just pop back and
oh.
forth. And you talking about me dancing. The bet, you're scared in high school, go to the prom and you can't dance. Just think of that fly swatter popping your leg. You're going to be moving them legs. You may
I,
look kind of like you've got a disease, but you're going to be moving on that dance floor if you imagine the fly swatter. So my mom would do the fly until the day she said, go grab that limb off the tree. And I came back with a big log and handed it to her. She said, hey, this kid's growing up quick. Maybe I shouldn't beat him anymore. Beat and throw him in the dungeon. He's getting tough. May put me in the dungeon. So that was the day
oh,
I didn't get any more fly swatters with the fly swatter broke on my legs. It was
oh,
time to
oh.
quit.
Always got worried when the wooden spoon came out
Oh, I
around
hate the
our
wooden
kitchen,
spoon.
man.
I
That was
hate
the
the
worst one.
wooden spoon.
Well, Professor, getting back to this game,
Okay, I'm sorry.
your conflicting data is, I think, picking up on something that the public is picking up on, because the 87% of the money is going on the over, and I agree with that. I think this game is going to be more points scored. Really love Bijan Robinson in this situation, but I also think Cousins is going to work the tight end over pretty good. So, and that seems to be, something that we see a lot of from Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure which Pittsburgh is going to show up, to be perfectly honest with you. It'll a lot of depend on whether it's Russell Wilson or not. But one thing I do notice is the public is using bad process here when it comes to their bets, because this line is only +3 for Pittsburgh. 68% are taking the +3. Only 24% are betting on the money line. If you are expecting the game to be 1 or 2 point game, and that's why you're taking the 3, why not take the money line at +143 instead of taking
Nice.
the +3 at even money? To me, it's bad process. Take the better odds and bet on Pittsburgh to win. If you think they're going to be within 3, bet on them to win. That's like having a 7, 8 to 1 shot at the track, and you're only betting them to place and show. If you like them good enough to win, bet them win place, and instead, and cash the big check when you're right about your prediction. But that's kind of how I'm looking at it there. As far as player by player goes, in this matchup, it's going to be very interesting what we end up seeing when it comes to this game. Again, I love Bijan Robinson. How
I
much are
got
we
him
going
at
to see of
107.
Tyler Algier?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a heavy use for Bijan. Kyle Pitts had a little hammy issue, but I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. And Drake London's going to be the wide receiver targeted by a big amount when it comes to this matchup. I know Darnell Mooney is supposed to be the WR2 here, but if you wanted a deeper play and to
Yeah.
go after some props on this one, I think the guy who might emerge as a secondary option in that offense is a guy who has had, in limited playing time, some big play ability, and it's Ray McCloud. Name that is not going to be one at the top of everybody's lips this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Ray McCloud take over as the WR2 on Atlanta. What does that mean as far as his fantasy value? very little to start the season. Just going to have to keep an eye on it, but I think he could
Check
win
those
out
snaps.
those secondary. But watch those snaps. And as far as Pittsburgh goes, I don't think there's a whole lot of surprises when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Freiermuth is going to be the guy at tight end. I know there's been a lot of talk about Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, who of course was coaching Atlanta last year, is well known for using multiple tight ends. Well, he'll use multiple tight ends, but the best pass catching tight end is Pat Freiermuth. So that's the only guy you care about in fantasy football. I don't have a good handle on what's going to happen with the wide receiver situation in Pittsburgh. George Pickens takes over as the de facto alpha, but he's never acted like an alpha. Roman Wilson could emerge there, and Van Jefferson is just the other guy in the room. No fantasy value there on a consistent basis, but that's how I see the breakdown as far as the running back
the
situation.
quarterback. It's not Russell Wilson. It's the other
It would
Fields.
be Justin Fields if
I would
Wilson
rate
is
him
out. Yep.
much higher than Wilson. Fields did well on my metrics last year weekly. Fields wasn't bad
No,
compared. Yeah,
Fields will be really good, but might take the value. The uncertainty about who he's going to find as his wide receiver target
yeah.
it goes either way, because you got two new quarterbacks at the same time. An interesting player that I am curious about how he gets used this year is Cordarrelle Patterson.
Patterson. Yeah.
He he could line up some as a wide receiver. He could be the goal line guy. There's a lot of interesting things that could happen with Cordarrelle Patterson. I don't know how he's going to be used. As far as Warren and Harris go, I think it'll be pretty much a 50-50 split, which drops both of their values.
Yeah, that's what I see with my metrics. Firemouth is just a typical high floor ceiling. You hope more than you get. He's going to have his weeks. Okay. But if you try to, it's hard to stream tight ends, folks, because they're touchdown dependent and except the more elite ones that get lots of activity. So we'll know. All I'll say is, since it's Justin Fields, he loved the Komet in Chicago. So when I'm hearing that, when I looked at my usage metrics from this summer, the bell went off when I saw Fields. I'm like, I was a little weaker on Freiermuth with Wilson, but now I'm moving more to I'm kind of liking that I picked him up in a few leagues as my streamer. Usually, if I picked up Freiermuth, I usually had Hawkinson as the one. So I may be riding him until Hawkinson. By the way, I saw some article week 7. I think they got a bye for Hawkinson week 6, Dennis. So I'm hoping that I won't have. There's a couple, and I don't know who's got a week 7 bye. I think a couple tight ends. I forgot which one that I'm worried about, that I needed Hawkinson back. But anyway, having Freiermuth, I'm going to be riding him earlier. If I've got Hawkinson, I tried to pair that up all day long. You were just getting Hawkinson so cheap, and so there's this value thing, and I don't know if it's a test, and I know there's data out there, but it just seems to me if he can come back to 80%, 90% of what he was, he's going to help us so much, Dennis, in the playoffs, that we're going to be rewarded. If we can make the playoffs, that's I think he might win us a league or two extra. I'm
Yeah,
hoping. That's what I'm hoping, that he'll have some nice spike weeks in that 3-week, playoff window and send me on. I'm hoping that that'll be the case.
Yeah, and the tight ends, two starting tight ends that'll be off week 7 are Cole Kmet and
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson.
Okay.
So,
Komet
um,
is who I needed Hawkinson. So sometimes Firemouth was gone, because I grabbed Hawkinson and then I start looking around, who do I need? So I think Komet, and given that situation, whew, I'm worried about him as well. But you have to make choices and decisions. So I'm going to live and die with the streaming tight end, having the Hawkinson, finding some partner to get me early in the season, just keep me in the games, and get me that 8 points a week, and I think I'll be happy with Fryermuth or Komet or whoever. I know people saying, "Hey, well, hey, tight ends, that's a rough landscape, folks," and if I can get 10, Kelsey, I know, got us what, 8 points.
yep.
I'm not upset. I know he'll have better games, so it'll come back. People already, boy, he's a bust, and Kelsey is not a bust, folks. Uh, the Kansas City Chiefs are not washed up, folks, and all that other blah blah that we heard. Look, I'm a Saints fan. I went to the Hall of Fame. It was the Hall of Chiefs. Okay, Dennis, I'm not going to be over that for a while. Okay, that hurt. That was deep wounds in my fantasy football soul, Dennis. There's some cracks in there because of what I saw. And you were gloating and taking funny pictures, and that hurts my soul, Dennis. You hurt my soul at the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
I'm tender.
I,
The old professor's tender with them
I,
Saints.
I lived 50 years between Super Bowls as a Chiefs fan. I stayed loyal to the brand, just like you have stayed loyal
To the
to your New
Saints.
Orleans Saints, and with no payoffs. Well, that's enough of the squirrel games. I'm
Okay.
tired of talking about these miserable, annoying games. Let's
Yeah.
talk about one of the Husky games. How about
Got
the
to do
Tex?
Detroit and Rams,
Yeah,
52 points.
that'll be our last game that we
Okay.
do.
So who
But
do you want to pick?
let's
Houston,
let's go
Indy,
Houston
or
and the Indy. I think that is going to be a very exciting game to watch this week.
okay. So Houston, here it is, 26-21, 2.5 points. It's a low spread game, 48 points. This, by having a low spread and a high over under, points to fireworks. And that's what Vegas is. Houston seems to have a nice RB situation and tight end. So I'm hoping that Schultz, I think I paired him with Hawkinson. The data with this data says that the quarterback wide receiver is a little tough with Houston. And that's just not set well with me, but I'm optimistic about Stroud. So that's probably me. That's why I like, at least I can't come back and be tricked, right? We all want things, right? I want Stroud to have a great game, et cetera, et cetera. Look, as a fantasy player, I want every game over 56, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
I want them all day long, lots of points. Give me for my players. Indy should be able to pass, and more pass. Both defenses are in play, both kickers. The only thing, Jonathan Taylor is going to have to rush according to the DAPS and keep them honest, but it says tough. Houston is away. They love to rush, but they really love to pass. They're a weird team last year in home away. Dennis, they love to rush and didn't like to pass at home. Away, 21 percentage the other way passing attempts. This screams Stroud goes off. Indianapolis, home, they love to rush. Pass is average compared to the league. So Taylor against a tough DAP. However, the conflicting data landscape says rushing is all in the green and Houston passing all day long, Dennis. And I think I've got some of our secret metrics here. Let me see if I got it. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see this or not. It's probably good. You can't see my secret sauce. Uh, Dennis, the metrics for passing, I'll share this. One method says 270 passing. The other metric says 316 for Houston, Dennis.
Wow.
That is
Wow.
such a strange situation this year. I think I'm gonna be exploring the prop betting there for Stroud. I guess I'm probably eat up with Indy, on the other hand, seems to be about 237 to 248. So not as much excitement for me with that data. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking. And I've got the individual players if you want to talk about that after you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really interested. I think this is going to be a big shootout game. I really do. Stroud's passing prop, though, is
Yeah.
pretty high. 276 and a half.
Dennis,
So
what did one method
over
says,
300.
one method, yeah, my one method says 270, 270. So
So
notice that Vegas is right where I'm. Dennis, isn't this funny? 1 year of data, and I'm getting close to some of it. That inspires me, folks, because I worked a month and a half slave. Dennis was calling me every day and chewing my ass and making me do this work in the data. He's a tough taskmaster, folks. He sounds happy and jovial. He's like an evil kind of guy, man. He get that data for me now. Get to work, Bush.
I was threatening him with a virtual fly swatter,
I'm
folks.
telling you,
It
making me do
kept him.
the data fly swatter day. Anyway, it's somewhere between 270 and 316. Then that just
Wow.
that wets my whistle. So I just want to let you know on that.
And here's an interesting play that you might want to consider.
Yeah.
There
This
are
is a prop.
relatively, considering how high the passing yardage prop is and
Yeah.
how high your data says we should get. How
Yeah.
about this for a prop on Diggs? 59 and a half yards. How
That
about
seems
this
low, Dennis.
Collins at 70 and a half and Tank Dell at 55 and a half?
Sounds like you could almost take all those.
I'm
If
willing
you're
to maybe
over. Yeah.
I'm willing to play over on all three of them and let
Is there
somebody
an
beat me.
in-game parlay?
Yeah, I think you could probably do that at most sites. So yeah, I'm interested to see if I can play. I might have to also play a prop on the other side of the game. It's quite often what they make you do when you do
I'm
that.
looking
But
at my book, passing, player passing. So I love my casino, Dennis, because I can pick my target yards and get certain. So if I say he's over, I get plus 104, 279. If I say he's over 289, I get plus 132.
wow, that is
If I
nice.
say over 299, I get plus 165. If he goes 309 or higher, 215, Dennis. And if he goes 319, it's 275. I'm thinking I'm going to layer in some Stroud things and maybe structure my money. And again, folks, this is just Dr. Bush being crazy on these prop things. I'm not sure how to structure my money here on that, but I'm, in the casino looking at these props now, Dennis, but I may take a more conservative one. My thing is, I'm probably going to bet, say, like $2 on one prop and maybe $6 on one. Try to be aggressive because I really like that that high number. I'm just wondering, should I get greedy, or should I take the $2 and take the extreme prop, and the $4 to take the more less extreme? And if I hit both, great. But I mean, think about it, you can hit both. If it's over 279, I can get plus 104. If it's over 309, I can get 215. So I can get $4 at plus 104 and $2 at plus 215. You see, I don't know enough of this prop betting. I'm used to the horse races and, you know, betting there. I get a feel for what seems right. Right now, when I just went through that, it doesn't hit me on how I should play this data.
No, and it's
Any
very
advice,
interesting.
Dennis? I'm
No,
listening.
no,
How would you
it's
do it? Would you structure multiple props that way? Does your
yeah.
casino allow you to pick little segments?
I do have one that allows me to do that, and then the other where I play mainly three-legged prop parlays
Okay.
does not. And I've been concentrating more on the prop parlays, but I really like that idea of juicing the odds. If the data tells you to go higher, why not? Why not give a little bit more on the yardage if you know that the props say that we're likely to be there? I could see a 300-yard game for CJ Stroud without any problem in this matchup.
See, so
Because
when you hear that, how do you, because you've been doing this more than me, how do you work that? Do you put more of your money in the more extreme
yeah,
parlay, or do you put more on the lesser, the more safer? In other words, how do you manage the safety of the props?
it's similar to, for instance, on my props this week,
Uh-huh.
I have the option on a three-legged prop parlay where I can take lower odds on hitting it, but I can tie in about 1.5, odds for just hitting two of the three. So I took the conservative approach, and I've hit 3 of 3 props, and I made 1.5 times my money. And I would have lost all 3 props is how it turns out if I would have gotten aggressive. But the reason I got aggressive on going for a couple of the props that I did is because I had that option of if I miss on one, I'm still getting paid off. So using the yardage thing, I think I would bet it in such a way that my lower amount bet was going to, if that cashed, I was going to break even, and I'd go with the.
So you would add, yeah. So you're putting more money in the safe
I'm putting more money in the
slice.
safe, and so I'd put maybe 5 on the safe using 5 units versus 3 units
Yeah.
on the more aggressive, and the odds would sort of even it out. Now, if you win both, if you hit the second prop, you're cashing both, so you're going to be just fine. You're going to make obviously more money, but you're a little safer. You're gonna buy yourself. You're gonna give up a little bit of the top end to make sure that if you're off by a little bit and you don't hit that higher amount. But I'd be pretty aggressive with that high amount, because if the data says that 300 game is
Well,
possible,
it's
I might push it.
270 to 316, I believe, or 309. I forgot which one.
I
Yeah.
might roll the dice on the upper side of that and get a little bit, depends on where the odds are. If they
Okay.
give you even better odds to go 285, 290,
Yeah.
I might press that upper high end a bit, because I think he could have a big game here.
Okay. Okay. Indianapolis, any props or anything there?
Indianapolis, it's going to be interesting because I think Pittman's number is too low. We're going receiving yards of 65.5 for Pittman. I think that's too
I've
low. I
got him
think
as a
he'll.
fringe, top 12 to top 20 this week.
Yeah, I
That's
think
kind of
he's a.
where I got him in there.
Yeah, think he's going to be fed all day, and I would expect 75, 80 yards would be what I would expect. Uh, Pretty much minimum out of Pittman this week. I think he'll have a nice week. Richardson is not the greatest quarterback as far as throwing the ball. He's going to be running,
I'm surprised
a
his
bit as
running
well.
props. I bet I could bet his running props. What have you checked his running props?
His
Richards?
running prop is pretty high. It's 45.5 yards, which is pretty healthy for a quarterback. Still think he could exceed that, but I
They
think
got
it's a.
him in mind. Over unders 41.5. Is that what you said? That's what
Yeah,
the prop is.
45.5. Yep.
No, this is 41.
Oh boy,
I
there
can get him at 41.
I would take that bet. I would
Over
take that bet.
41.
Yeah, 45.5 seems to me to be a pretty healthy number for a quarterback. That that's a number that kind of scares me for a quarterback. To give you an idea, last year, of course, he only had two healthy games. He had 40 and 56
So that's
yards.
where Vegas is kind of looks like. Then I'm getting a little. I mean, if you just average those out, 41 is not a bad little number here for my prop.
No, I think that's a prop that I wouldn't be afraid to play.
Yeah.
And as far as, fantasy football moves in this game, um, Pittman's the guy that I like. Guy that I have on a lot of best ball teams is Adonai Mitchell. Josh Downs is going to be out.
Oh,
So
he
that
is out.
plays, yeah.
So
So that
who is the number two now that you think? I
it'll
mean, there
be a,
was a lot of talk
yeah,
about Downs.
yeah, it'll be Adonai Mitchell this week. Will be the
Yeah, I know, but
secondary
just
guy.
say season, just how did you feel? Did you draft a lot of Downs versus
I
Mitchell,
I
or
have kind
you
of a
didn't
mix
really?
between, yeah, in best ball I have a mix between Downs and Mitchell. In redraft I have zero of either guy.
Okay.
I think Pittman's the only guy to own in redraft and in
Mm.
set lineup leagues, unless you're in real deep dynasty leagues or like a 16 team league is the only time I'd consider the secondary guy on Indianapolis, because I just don't see Richardson being able to support two wide receivers on a regular basis.
Gotcha.
But in best ball, I'll take
Hmm.
my shots at anybody who's going to line up.
Gotcha. Okay. Are we talking Detroit Rams?
We
Finish
got
this
to
out.
talk Detroit and the Rams. That is the huskiest of the husky games. That's a 95-pound husky. That's a huge
Wow,
husky.
that's a huge husky. So Vegas says 4 points, 30 to 22, 52 over under.
Oof.
And is it any wonder the DAPs are saying don't rush, pass on both teams? You don't want to play any of the kickers or D's, tight ends. I know everybody's on Laporta, but this says tough. Uh, it says passing all. This seems to be a passing circus that they're predicting by the DAPS. Detroit's at home. They love to pass at home. 16%, one of the highest in the league last year. Tendencies passing, peppering, lots of targets all day long. So there's probably some prop advantages there, Dennis. I don't know if you can prop on pass attempts, but there may be, this may be the week to, see what those props are saying, because the metrics from last year would imply uh, a higher. In other words, in an away game, it's 16% below the league average, which is one. So Rams away, they love to pass. 21% passing away, rushing a little bit higher, 7%, but it's the passing. Landscape says Rams passing all day long, all day long. Detroit gets an average, and for Detroit being average passing with at home, that means it's really high as well. My secret sauce for this, Dennis, for passing yards is, if I can find the Detroit and Rams. You know what's interesting is both methods are actually not pointing to this high flying kind of thing. So we're going against Vegas, Dennis. We're talking around 245 for Detroit
Wow.
versus Rams 230 to 248. So if you look at all possibilities, there's a possibility where Rams out pass Detroit according to these metrics. So in this kind of, with the conflicting data, you see with the Houston data, it was already high 270, right, versus 3. With this, my feeling when I'm seeing this is maybe I don't want this is passing yards. I'm not sure what to take of this, Dennis. It takes back my enthusiasm of betting. It doesn't take back my enthusiasm of playing. So I'm playing the studs, et cetera, et cetera. But just there's something here. And folks, you're saying, well, don't you know? No, I don't know. That's why we're doing a beta test. Dennis, we don't know, right? I charted all the data from last year. I'm applying it to this year. I'm going to start adding to that database. I don't know what this is saying yet. Is Vegas right? Are we right? Because some of this has Vegas metrics cooked in. So that confuses the issue as well. So I didn't mean to rain on our parade, but that kind of rains on it a little bit. So I don't
Prop
know.
on
Yeah.
the props on passing yards, they get 265 for Goff, 274.5 for Stafford.
See,
Um,
this would say take the under. I mean, if
yeah,
you just
and,
follow the metrics, and I bet you can get some nice odds.
yeah, I bet you could. And the passing attempts, 36.5 for Stafford and 33.5 for Goff. So they're really setting it high as if it is going to be a showdown. And with your metrics going against that, that's very interesting. But here again is conflicting data when you come break down the game, because here Vegas is expecting huge passing numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the way of attempts. But if you look at the actual props for the individual receivers, and the numbers are so much lower. It's 76.5 for Puka, 71.5 for Cup, which are pretty reasonable numbers, and a pretty high number, I should say, for St. Brown. 88.5 yards for him is a huge prop. But Jamison Williams at 38.5, Demarcus Robinson at 27.5. If this was going to be a shootout, wouldn't those secondary and tertiary receivers get a play as well? And Kyron Williams only 14.5 on his receiving yard prop. So there's some interesting data here within the data when you break it all down. But I agree, maybe we see a more conservative game plan than we thought we would see from these two teams. And maybe that's what we see. But just kind of interesting when you look at the data and you see what happened, for these two teams, and you kind of say, oh, okay, are we looking at a big shootout, or are we looking at both teams that realize that they need to keep these games under control? It's going to be interesting, and I don't know if there's an answer, especially not on week one.
Yeah, I don't know, Dennis. It's very tricky. I've got 24 hours for me to think about this and everything else I got to think of. So I'm more exuberant about Houston props than I am. Folks, I'm trying to be conservative. Dennis is playing parlays. I think I'm just going to stick to passing yards this time to focus on that slice. That is just because I got so many other leagues and whatnot, right? I mean, look, I love to gamble, but I'm feeling this year, since we're beta testing, that I want to be a little bit more conservative. So,
And and
Dennis,
here's
is
the
there
thing,
any? Okay, go ahead.
well, here's the thing is we know what these two teams just did against each other last year in the playoffs. And it was 24-23 Detroit. So it was 47 points. That's 5 under where they've set the over under.
Yeah,
That's huge. That's a huge difference. And yes, teams can sometimes be more conservative in a playoff game, but these are two teams that know what each other's capable of doing. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this come in under that 52 number. Maybe both teams are in the 20s. So it's still a high scoring game. It's still, upper 40s, 47, 48, somewhere around there for the over under. But I think they might play back to what they did in the playoffs, more than having this as some kind of a, 400 yards of offense for each team type of game. Because we do have an idea of what these teams did just a few months ago.
gotcha. I'm just like I said, I'm going to wait on a lot of betting. I'm feeling like I'm going to bet something in Houston right now. I don't know the rest of the games. We haven't talked about all of them, but right now it feels like I'm going to put a little money on the Houston passing yards.
I think that's a good investment indeed. And, in this Detroit game against the Rams, you are playing anybody that you drafted.
Oh yeah, as far as
You were,
players,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I got Laporta ranked 110, one of the top ones. Him and Kelsey, I had them. Gibbs, but I got Montgomery at a nice pace too. Uh, that's a pretty high tandem of by that. Golf actually got him as kind of average quarterback, and that may be my problem. Brown, I love. Jameson Williams at 48 versus Sun God. It looks like we got an A, a 1, and a 3. If I had to talk about these by my metrics this week, so people drafted Jamerson as the 2, but I don't. What do you think about him? I guess
He is a huge variance of outcomes. Okay. He is going to be either real big spread in where you think he's going to be, but he's got an incredibly low floor as well. This is
I think that
incredibly volatile player who I would not be shocked if his stat line was, 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's 4 targets for 1 catch and 17 yards. There's just no middle ground to try to figure out where he's going to be. High risk reward guy. The word out of camp is that he really seems to have had that revelation of how to beat defenders, as an NFL wide receiver. He's working harder than he ever did before. Remember his rookie year, he was hurt. Last year, he was suspended. This is his first full year that he's had from week 1. And could we see sort of a Nico Collins breakout where, was a player that everybody was down on, and then all of a sudden he had this huge year, and that's who he became, is a great second receiver to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's possible, but I'm on a wait and see basis. I drafted some more of him. I've got some of him in Dynasty, and I'll kind of hold off really rolling him out in starting lineups until I see which Jameson Williams shows up.
Gotcha. Rams side, the players, I like Kerwin Williams. You know, I have him ranked high. Stafford, I just don't know what I'm getting with him. And Cup and Puka, I have them 1A, 1B. It's just I have
Yeah.
more uncertainty about Cup. Puka seems safer. So but having both almost cuts their value down to closer to, you know, the WR2 kind of, it's like two WR2s versus an alpha there. I just don't think either one can beat the other. I think they work in tandem. If I'm playing daily fantasy, maybe Parkinson is your surprise cheap tight end to play in some of these tournaments and whatnot. I'm doing props this year. I usually do daily fantasy, but I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. So I'm just going to I'm going to test props this year. Blake Corum, a lot of talk about him, Dennis. What you think? What's your?
I think he's definitely, this is a 1-2 situation right
Okay.
now to start the season. I think Kyron Williams will get 65 to 70% of the opportunities, and Blake Corum will get the majority of the rest. He's a very solid
So
player.
Ronnie Rivers is not in the conversation.
Nah, not unless one of these guys gets dinged. I think we're going to see, the worst case is we're going to see 1 and 1A.
Is it
The
closer to
best
60-40
it
snaps
it
and
it could
touches?
be. It'll
Yeah.
be worth paying attention to. The funniest thing that happened during the preseason, though, with these two guys is Kyron Williams was named the punt returner, and the
Oh, that's right.
fantasy football world on Twitter went absolutely bonkers. Oh, that means Corum's going to get more carries. That means Kyron Williams
So
is
they
not
would
thought of as.
argue that means 60-40 quorum.
Yeah, but anyway, the next week
Yeah.
Blake Corum got announced as the kick returner. So you got one of the lead running backs as the kick returner. You got the other as the
As the
punt
punt.
returner,
Yeah.
which has the most, effect in dragging a guy down. Or we know that in the past, the Rams used Cooper Kupp as a punt returner. It didn't hurt his offensive snaps one bit. So maybe we just ignore it completely on this. But in my opinion, it's Kyron Williams 65 to 70, and Corum gets the rest. But we'll have to watch how this develops and see, and maybe we adjust. Maybe this turns into a timeshare where we play them both, and the only difference is who gets into the end zone. Spikes that week's production, but the rest of the time they're fairly even. Another name to keep an eye on at
Okay.
tight end for the
I'm
Rams
listening.
is Davis Allen.
Okay.
Colby Parkinson's definitely, the leader in the clubhouse to get the most snaps. Interested to see how Davis Allen is used. And Hunter Long is also on that roster, and he's a young player that has had some ability in the past. I would not be shocked to see a lot of two tight end sets out of the Rams this year, and that might hurt Demarcus Robinson a little bit, except on the obvious passing downs. But the good news is both Kupp and Nakua coming into week 1 without an injury designation, and that means that's also the bad news for both, because it probably takes the top end off of both Kupp and Nakua. But these are both guys that should get, peppered with lots of targets this year. So if I drafted them, they're going into the week 1 lineup for sure. And I wouldn't even mind if I had a team and I got, I think, one dynasty team where I've got some Kupp and Nakua together. They'll
Play
both
them
be in the
both.
lineup. So yeah, play them both works for those two guys. Very unlikely you were able to draft both of them in redraft because they're priced too close together.
That's great, Dennis. I'm just to remind people, we started last week on the video, actually in a little bit after the show stuff. So I don't know if we're finished with our official podcast, Dennis. If you want to sign off, and then we'll keep videoing for the truth. Maybe go over another game as our bonus. If you want to, if you've listened this long, what have been going about 2 hours, Dennis?
That's about right.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up the regular podcast indeed. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. You will enjoy all the defensive matchup data and all of the
All this
professor's
data is going to be out, Dennis. All
secret
this.
sauce that'll all be available game by game and very useful for those little tougher decisions to make. You don't bench your studs. If you drafted them in the first 5 rounds, you better have them in your starting lineup or you're going to be regretting it come Monday morning. But head on over to the sites of fantasyfootball.com. You can check out all the data. You check out my predictions for the 2024 season.
I got to get that out. That editor's being damn slow. I think I
but
just remembered this morning I got to get that. I'm sorry, the editor's got to get that out.
but the data will be up there for all to see this year. So you can come back at me with all of your barbs and all of your fantasy
receipts are listening and watching, Dennis.
At the end. And then, of course, head back over here
next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
For 2 more editions next week of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Okay, welcome to After the Show. I'm your host, Dr. John Bush, and I've got this character here from Danville, Illinois, Dennis Michelson here. He's such a Chiefs homer. Okay, I need to. Dennis, I thought we might, if you got something to talk about that we need to cover, I am going to get the predictions out this afternoon, Dennis, and the podcast when you get to me, and I'm going to up all the figures. So you want to do another game, or do we need to talk some props, or what you want to do for our after the show secret stuff?
Yeah, let's look at one more of the Husky games.
Let's see. I think we're out the last.
Well, it's a quasi Husky game. How about that? It's not quite a Husky game, but I think it's got some interesting fantasy players.
Houston, we talk in.
Let's
Detroit,
look at Buffalo,
Miami. No, we do.
Buffalo and the Cardinals.
Okay,
Buffalo and the Cardinals.
You don't want to do Miami, Jacksonville.
No, I'm interested in this Buffalo and Cardinals game, and it'll become very apparent why here when
what have you got?
I talk about this one.
Okay, so this is Buffalo and Arizona. And here it is. Vegas says 30-17. Arizona gets heavily spanked, and 6.5 spread, 47. That's pretty damn close to being a Husky. This is a Husky light. Buffalo, it says pretty much do them all, even play the defense. And Arizona, you do not want to play their defense. Passing to the tight end, Arizona. Everybody's Trey McBride. This is that, I know you're not sitting him. Looks like the wide receivers are tough and the rushing with Connor, and I need Connor to come through. I drafted him a lot, so I'm hoping that below average is not real. As far as Buffalo home, they love to rush and they love the pass. They're more active. They're very spry. League top activity at home. They're really tending to be biased to the home more than the away. So we'll see after a couple away games, Dennis, does this kind of stuff hold? So for this time, betting props, I'm feeling like, okay, they love to pass and rush, so that's good. Arizona passes a little more away. They rush about the same either way. So they're going to need to pass to win. Landscape-wise, using a different way of looking, says Buffalo is in the green, passing in reception, and in the red. James Cook fans rushing. That landscape predicts a tough go. Arizona, tough passing, but my Connor has an average matchup. So that makes me feel good here about that. So that's the overall kind of view of the game from the different metrics that we chart.
And here's what I'm going to go on record as saying about the Buffalo Bills defense this year.
Yeah.
I think, especially to start the season,
Yeah.
we are not looking at the same Buffalo Bills defense that we ended the regular season with last year. What I'm looking at is a secondary that is weaker, and I'm looking at a pass rush that is also weaker. I think Arizona is going to score quite a bit on Buffalo. I think Buffalo's still going to win the game. Don't get me wrong. I love that home field advantage for Buffalo.
They
But
love to be
I
at home.
think this is going to be a higher scoring game. I think this game is going to be over 50 when it comes
Wow.
to the over under. I love the over on this because I do not trust that Buffalo defense. I think Connor's going to be able to run on them because the defensive line and the linebacker core are weaker, but that secondary also got weaker. And I think the rookie's going to show up pretty good in this. But I also don't have any faith in the Arizona defense being able to stop Buffalo's offense. I think Buffalo's wide receivers are going to be better than most expect. Even if they're not, Dalton Kincaid will be fine. He'll throw to the running backs, and Josh Allen will just be Josh Allen, and we'll figure out a way to score 30 without a problem. But I look for Arizona to be a little closer in this. I would expect it to be more like 30-24, 30-27. So I'm
Wow. Sounds
expecting,
like you want to bet Arizona, their score, and the over under
oh, yeah,
if you're doing a
yeah.
parlay there.
Yeah, I definitely want to bet over on the Arizona points if I'm allowed to do that, and I'll take the over under all day long. I think this is going to be a tougher game than Buffalo's defense wants to see, and I would not be surprised if both teams put up some outrageous
Well,
offensive numbers.
the DAPs are based on last year, Dennis. You see,
Yep. Yep.
there's the and folks just realize part of doing our own data and getting our hand in the broth, we know what's going on. And we know, hey, it's probably going to need a little more salt this year than last year. So we're not tricked by how come it's not the same last year? Because we're using common sense that Dennis has given us a warning sign to be cautious. And Dennis, you track that with players. I'm wondering maybe next year you might consider just a blurb on, what the consensus seems to be on defenses. And then sometimes you have some real strong takes, just like you just enunciated there. Uh, that'd be, I mean, Dennis, we got plenty to do. Damn, we need interns, but I think that might be something. I don't know in your predictions article, did you talk about the D? That may be because for me, who streams, that catches my interest. You know, and of course, in a couple weeks, we'll start using this year's metrics a little bit, and then certainly by week 4, we're going to be deep into it, and we'll have a better feel. I'm just saying, for an article next, just put that on our 100th to do next year. Okay, Dennis and I have a lot of that to do. Anyway,
Yeah,
Dennis, I just thought that was interesting. I think you got some stuff to say that intrigues me a little bit, and because I do not have time to track it at all. I'm barely doing what I'm doing.
yeah, and this is one defense where there's so many notable changes. And unlike other notable changes where teams had a lot of draft picks, so they were able to fill the gaps, I'm not so sure Buffalo had enough draft picks to fill the gaps. So I'm looking at their defense. They just got hit by the salary cap too hard in one season. And unless they get really efficient in their draft picks with their later round guys and some of their signings, they're going to be in a world of hurt. Now they get some parts and pieces back later in the season that are starting on the injured list, but I'm just a little bit concerned about where this Buffalo defense might be. Still expect them to win the game. Don't get me wrong here. Arizona's got a weak defense as well. I just look at a lot of points being scored here, and I think this is going to be a game where you're going to want to have a lot of the parts and pieces. As far as the Buffalo wide receivers go,
I can look at that.
this is where
Samuel, Coleman, and Shakir.
Correct. And I think Coleman is number 3 out of these. I'm sorry. I think Samuel is number 3 out of these lists of these 3. Coleman, the rookie, Shakir, of course, the journeyman who's kind of like
Dennis. I can't figure out the 1AB. It looks like 1AB and C to me. I'm very confused by this backfield, this wide receiver.
And it could be much like that. The only thing I will say about Curtis Samuel is his best season he ever had in fantasy football, he was still only a WR3. I think it's a possibility that he could nudge out one of these 2 guys for the WR2 on their team as far as fantasy football points go. I'm betting on the rookie, Keon Coleman, to be better than Shakir. I know that's not the way a lot of folks are going. A lot of folks are putting a little more money on Shakir to be better than Coleman. I think the rookie could be pretty good.
But Dennis, how are they making that prediction? We hadn't seen game conditions.
We haven't seen game conditions, but
it's
of course,
pedigree. Does Coleman have a bad pedigree?
Keon Coleman, the knock on him is that he can't separate. That he's not a great route runner and he can't separate.
Is he the only one? I mean, hadn't we had some greats that had that same knock, supposedly?
We have talked about a lot of wide receivers who could not separate. And until last year, Nico Collins wasn't a great route runner. Now, all of a sudden, Nico Collins is all world this year going into this season. A lot can change in one season, and a lot can change from college to the pros. Some of these guys are just such great athletes that even at the college level, it doesn't take their best game to beat the opposing player. Okay. In the NFL, it does. In the NFL, if you cannot improve as a player, you're not going anywhere. And if you look at the long list of guys that were not top 10 draft picks who have gone on to be great wide receivers in the NFL, the list is long. And so I look at Keon Coleman and I say, I see the ability to go up and win 50-50 balls. If he becomes a better route runner, then he's not doing that all the time. And I look at a quarterback like Josh Allen who can fit the ball in through a tight window. I'm not saying Keon Coleman's going to be a top 10 wide receiver this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him top 20. I wouldn't be surprised to see him beat out Shakir and Curtis Samuel as the best wide receiver on the Buffalo Bills.
So, given that, are we expecting then Allen to pepper the Cook, Ray Davis, Kincaid, Knox versus the wide receivers? In other words, a little bit shift towards the targets to the RBs and the tight ends than, say, a typical team? Is that what you're envisioning by your scenario there?
Yes, usually on most teams that aren't the Kansas City Chiefs, where Kelsey becomes the first primary receiver, most of the time you've got a WR1 who gets a significant target share over the best tight end. Okay. Mark Andrews is an exception. Travis Kelce's an exception. last year Trey McBride was, because he didn't have he didn't have a wide receiver on the team that could keep up with him. What I would see with Buffalo is I think the tight end targets, while I still expect one of the wide receivers to lead the team in targets, I think the gap between the top wide receiver and the top tight end is going to be closer than it is on most teams. Josh Allen, he would pepper Dawson Knox with quite a few targets when either Diggs or Davis
And he was free in best
was
ball,
not
just
playing.
about.
Correct. Correct. So I don't wouldn't be surprised to see both tight ends have some weeks where best ball,
Yeah.
and not be surprised to see Dalton Kincaid be close to leading his team on targets if he's really good like we thought he was last year, and he showed it down the stretch last year in the last 5 or 6 games. A good target share. I'm looking at him as being sort of that X factor. Um, Josh Allen does not typically throw to his running backs a lot. That might increase this year. It's never been a thing where, his running backs have never been in the top 3 or 4 in the league in targeted uh, guys at the running back position, but that could change a little bit this year. But again, I expect Keon Coleman to be a pretty good football player. Is he going to be as good as Diggs, where you had that definitive number one? No, I don't. I I don't believe that he'll be the next coming of Stephon Diggs, but I think he's going to be top 25 material in fantasy football production. I don't think that's a prediction that is too outrageous, and I expect him to beat out Shakir. I would not be shocked to see Samuel and Shakir pretty close, though. And I wouldn't even be shocked to see Samuel take over as the number 2 over Shakir. I just don't think Curtis Samuel has the type of ability as a player to be a dominant alpha wide receiver unless Keon Coleman and Shakir are both bad. And then he wins by default. But in that case, Dalton Kincaid is the number 1 target leader on that team. It's going to be a fascinating team to watch all season long. And on the Arizona side of the ball,
Yep.
we love James Conner. He starts the season as the clear leader, but they don't like to load him up with a huge percent. So you'll see Trey Benson, you'll see DeMarcado on occasion, but not enough to have fantasy football viability week 1. I'm expecting a big week or big year from Trey McBride, and I'm also expecting the rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. to be outstanding as well. Dortch is an interesting player. He'll be working out of the slot a lot. He'll have some weeks where he has a spike week and you get excited. You
Best
spend
ball
money on
was
him.
really good. I picked
Best
him
ball,
up.
I
Yeah.
love him, and I love Michael Wilson all day long. And best ball,
Yep.
wouldn't trust him in my redraft lineup.
I agree. That's kind of what I'm thinking too. Especially this week, Trey McBride seems to have. Wouldn't that be something? He'd be the number 2 tight end. Everybody's had some ideas, and it, that would, people are already going to overpay for Likely. Dennis, we should probably predict the over under. In the fab, what percentage? I'm thinking there's going to be people pay over 50% for Likely. Just the crazy game he had. Folks, don't. If you need a tight end, just don't blow your budget, because Mark Andrews is not going anywhere, and likely is going to have his games, and it could be a tight end 1A, 1B, but still, that doesn't mean blow all your budget on Likely. I know people talk about that. I don't think Likely is the Puka Nakua to bet 40% of your bankroll like I did my fab last year as soon as I could get him, and it paid off. So far, I hadn't seen that this, but I'll, in case I see anybody, but right now I wouldn't, how much would you put? Just right, knowing that Andrews is still there.
If
People
I
gonna
needed a
overpay.
Yeah, if I needed a tight end real bad and likely was on waivers, which I don't think he's on waivers in a high percentage of leagues. First of all, I know maybe in ESPN, but in FPPC, I don't think he
No,
is.
even
And
in best ball, he's. I
oh,
checked today. He's
best ball, he was drafted in almost every league, and
yeah.
in redraft, his percentages were pretty high ownership wise. But I had him ranked preseason. This was with Andrews healthy.
Yeah.
I had him ranked as his upside and weekly value in that tight end 10 rank.
Yeah.
And, maybe we could see that up to maybe 6 or 7 if what we saw was real on Thursday night.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that it was just a situation where Kansas City has been well known since Spags has been the defensive coordinator to take your best option out of the game as much as possible. And with with uh, with the Ravens, that's Mark Andrews. It's not Zay Flowers. So they played in such a way, and the Ravens' offensive line was such a mess, as witnessed by at one point in the game, Professor, the average depth of target for the Ravens for Lamar Jackson was -2 yards.
Not good.
It was all thrown behind the line of scrimmage, whether it was to
Not good.
Flowers or whether it was to
Not good.
Justice Hill. It was short passing attempts were it. He ended up in the single digits, but that was a sign of how bad that offensive line was. And Mark Andrews is, we saw Isaiah Likely lay a guy out on a block. He's very capable, but he's of slighter build than Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is a tank. They were using Mark Andrews on the line more, and Likely was a little off the line in some circumstances. Some circumstances right on the line, and they were using 2 tight ends tight on the line, trying to help out their offensive tackles. But I don't envision that happening the whole year. So I think you're going to have these 3 or 4 point games out of Likely. Then he'll step up with a 10, 12 point game. I don't think we're looking at him as the top tight end. And as far as Trey McBride, preseason, I had him as my tight end 3 behind Kelsey and Andrews. I expect a big year out of this kid.
Yep. Great. I agree. Good stuff. So are we thinking about done? Because you and I'm going to send you the secret sauce file so you can look at all the stuff and prop betting. I got to get the editor to get your prediction out, and we got to get the podcast. So here it is. It's noon. I know you're probably, the dogs are ready to go. The cat's ready to go. My dogs are ready. So I think
Well,
we're going to end this, huh?
yeah, I got to get some lunch in me, Professor, before I go down and call a tractor pull
Oh, you're doing
this
a tractor
afternoon.
pull today.
Calling a
Ooh.
tractor pull late
Now
this
this
afternoon.
is this
So
where the weight shifts? And
yes,
it's okay. I've seen that
yes,
like on ESPN. I mean,
yep,
there's the the farmers take that business serious. That's
they
their
do, and
fantasy.
they do, and this is called a barnyard tractor pull. So
Ooh.
these are tractors that, in many
So
cases,
in your draft, did you do the short tractor strategy this year? Or did you go for the long tractor strategy?
Oh, here's the problem with that
Yeah,
is there's different weight classes starting
yeah.
at 4,500 pounds
Oh my
up
goodness.
all the way to the big boys. So
Oh
yeah,
my
so
god.
it's tough to handicap, but I usually go with the red machines.
I like it.
I go against the John Deeres, so that's usually the
Okay.
way I
Good.
handle my handicapping when it comes to tractor pulls.
Okay, end of the show then. Thanks for listening for after the show. It's fun, isn't it, Dennis?
It is fun. It's
Okay,
very
let me.
unscripted. I
It
like it.
is. It is. Okay, I'm gonna stop it. Okay, let me get you that file. I think I've got, so the two lines, the first line is more with the spread, and the second is kind of without the spread
Very
predictions.
interesting.
So I don't, like I said, I don't know what. Let me save this, and we'll see what it's all about. This is week one, so let me and I'll email you. It's 9/7. I got so many files. It gets so crazy. It really does. Dennis trying to figure all this crap out here. Okay. Okay, so I just saved it to the desktop there. Okay, yeah, I've got to look at I got to take pictures so I can look at this on the couch downstairs. I have a bonus room upstairs of the garage, so that's where I'm
Very
hiding.
nice.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
nice.
Okay, and I'll do that and try to get the podcast out this afternoon and your predictions article.
Very cool. Well, I'll get this sent to you. I've got it processing now.
Okay,
So I'll get that done and get it
we'll,
out,
and we'll
and
go from there.
we'll I'm sure be texting back and forth
Yep,
tomorrow morning as we get
yep.
ready for all these roster changes.
I agree. Okay, man. It was fun as usual.
Oh, good
Good
times,
time. This
Professor.
is good time. Good time stuff. Okay, Dennis.
All right, man. We'll see you.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.